So this is day 19 of me taking 60 milligrams of Strattera every morning to treat the symptoms of inattentive ADHD and anxiety. Um, Treatment of anxiety is an off-label use for Strattera. It's mainly used to treat symptoms of ADHD. But since I do have generalized anxiety and an attentive ADHD, my psychiatrist thought this would be a good medication to try. I also have major depressive disorder and cerebral palsy, but right now I'm mainly focused on treating the symptoms of anxiety and the ADHD. And I normally come on here once a week to update, but I'm doing it a little bit sooner because there is something that I wanted to talk about. And that's the fact that I'm finally starting to notice some improvement in my focus. If you have an attentive ADHD, you know how difficult it is to sit down and do something that you don't enjoy, something that you know you have to do, but you don't enjoy it, and so the brain just does not cooperate. Last semester, I had one class that just kept kicking my butt. It was anatomy and physiology of speech and hearing. And it was a lot of memorization, and it required couple of hours of studying a week. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit down for more than 15 minutes without feeling like I was falling asleep or being unable to focus because I just was not all that interested in the material that I was learning, and it was just a lot of memorization. And no matter how many times I tried to sit down and say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to study for at least an hour, I just couldn't do it. And if you don't understand how inattentive ADHD works, to a lot of outsiders, a lot of people who don't know about the condition or don't understand it, may attribute my lack of focus to laziness or just not trying hard enough or, whatever. But that's not what it is. That's just the way that our brains work. It doesn't cooperate when it comes to doing things that are not enjoyable. And so I struggled through that class. I got a B, which most people would say is pretty good. But it ruined my 4.0 GPA because prior to that I had straight A's. So that alone should tell you that I really struggled, and that's how it's been throughout most of my life. I struggled through high school. I'm struggling through college, even though I have mostly pretty good grades. A lot of my work, I would leave it to the last minute. I would procrastinate like no tomorrow, even if I didn't want to, even if I just kept beating myself up afterwards saying, you had 2 weeks to do this project. Why are you just now doing it? And even though I was able to get away with it for the most part and still get decent grades, it's a very stressful way to live, and it's very anxiety provoking. Not knowing if I'm going to be able to finish an assignment on time, or knowing that I'm doing it last minute and I'm rushing it and that it's not as good as it could have possibly been if I had just taken the time to do it earlier. But the fact is that my ADHD kept getting in the way of that, and I wasn't even aware that I had ADHD until earlier this year. And that's when I started trying to treat it. That's when my life and my symptoms started making more sense. And then I kind of understood, okay, I'm not lazy, I'm not crazy. My brain just works differently. And I started looking for better ways of coping and got into therapy and started taking medication, and I've tried a few. And I've reviewed and tried a few medications, and those are all in my channel. The ones that I've tried so far haven't worked out for me for one reason or another. They either have bad side effects or they just don't help at all. So I'm going on my 3rd week of Strattera, and yesterday and the day before I started noticing a change, an improvement in my ability to focus, because I'm taking a required chemistry class, and I decided to take it during the summer because it's shorter that way. If I take it during a regular school semester, I have to endure chemistry for 3 or 4 months. If I take it during the summer, the class is only 5 weeks long. But of course, they're trying to cram 4 months worth of work into 5 weeks. So we have a lot of work that we have to do, a lot of work that we have to turn in 1 week. And this class is entirely online because of COVID. Uh, so the day before yesterday, I knew that I had to read chapters 1 and 2 and watch the lecture videos for chapters 1 and 2, do a couple of discussion boards, and turn in some notes. And I was actually able to sit there for over an hour, read through the chapters, and take notes while I was doing it. I take my notes on my laptop on Microsoft Word. It's just a lot easier for me to type out my notes than it is to write them out. And another little cool thing about Microsoft Word that might help you if you have ADHD, I know that it works for me, is the dictate feature. The little microphone that pops up at the top toolbar that you can press, and you can talk or dictate whatever notes you want it to write, and it'll type them out for you. So sometimes when I'm tired of typing things out, or I need a change, it's easier for me to just talk to my computer and to have the dictate feature type out whatever I'm saying. I don't do that all the time, just every once in a while, and it does seem to help a little bit, to change things up a bit. Anyway, I was saying that I was able to sit down for an hour at a time yesterday and today to read through chapters 1 and 2 and take notes. And I'm also almost done with the lecture videos that go with each chapter. I have about 40 minutes left of lecture videos to watch and take notes for. But the fact that I was even able to sit down for an hour at a time and be productive, that's amazing, because last semester, before I started treating my ADHD, before I started on Strattera, I had an anatomy and physiology class that I just, like I said, could not sit down and focus for. I couldn't sit down for more than 15 or 20 minutes at a time and study and focus. And that cost me my 4.0 GPA. So I really think that the medication is finally starting to do something for my lack of focus and my ADHD symptoms. Although I don't particularly notice any improvement in my anxiety, but that's okay. I mean, the ADHD is part of what has kept me from learning how to drive, and that's something that I'm trying to do now. I got my permit, but I do need to practice driving more. But I tend to get really anxious behind the wheel and tend to get confused and distracted easily. And as you can imagine, it's difficult to learn to drive. But with my focus improving, hopefully that will also help with my goal of learning to drive eventually. As for my anxiety, my therapist and I did go over the fact that I hold my breath a lot when I'm anxious, and I do it involuntarily. Like, I don't even realize that I'm doing it. She says that sometimes when I'm talking, I hold my breath. And that makes sense, because if you've been noticing throughout this video, I constantly have to take a break to take a breath between when I'm speaking. And then I told her that I went to my optometrist and he was doing all kinds of tests on me, and he told me to follow his pencil. He was trying to get me to cross my eyes. And the closer that he got to me with his pencil, the more anxious and tense that I got. So it got to the point where he was really close to me and I froze up, and I didn't realize it, but he realized that I started holding my breath, and he said it'll be easier to follow my pencil if you're not holding your breath, so just try to breathe. And that's when I started thinking and realized that I do that a lot more than I'd like, and I don't even notice it half the time. It's almost like an automatic involuntary response. And it probably has something to do with the fight, flight, or freeze response. But point being that I also take very shallow and short breaths, which is an anxious way of breathing. And if I'm able to learn eventually to take slower and deeper breaths, that should help calm my nervous system down also. And I spoke to my doctor about it too, but she said, well, shortness of breath is often a symptom of anxiety. And I said, I know it is, but when I was younger, I was also diagnosed with asthma, but it was supposedly under control. I haven't had to use an inhaler since I was 10 years old. But I'm thinking, what if it's coming back now? And what if I'm just now starting to notice it? Could also be the fact that I got COVID last year and it probably did a number on my lungs. Point being that my doctor sent an inhaler to the pharmacy and I might just have to start using it again. But I also want to use some breathing techniques to learn to better regulate my breathing, because I know that your breath is controlled to everything. And if you can learn to manage and control your breath, I know that it helps with anxiety. And ultimately, that's the goal. Anyway, so that's it for now. I'll be back soon, in another week or so, or maybe sooner if I have anything else to update on.